power doesn't begin with victory. It begins with betrayal. With exile. With the moment you realize every smile is a disguise and every promise has a price. Machiavelli learned this the hard way. Once celebrated in Florence, he was imprisoned, tortured, cast out. He watched allies switch sides overnight and rulers fall by the hands of those they trusted most. That experience burned one truth into him: power is not companionship, it's survival. And survival demands walls no one can climb, built not from stone, but from silence, distance, and ruthless calculation. 5 centuries later, nothing has changed. Presidents, CEOs, generals, they still follow the blueprint of a man who lost everything and turned it into a manual for never losing again. The most powerful stand alone not because they are broken or cold, but because they know the rules. And the first rule is simple: trust is a luxury that cannot be afforded when survival is at stake. When was the last time a world leader or billionaire was seen laughing freely, vulnerable among equals? It doesn't happen. Not at the top. Sadness and sentiment don't protect power. Strategy does. Machiavelli, stripped of office and exiled from Florence in 1530, saw this truth carved in blood. He wrote The Prince not as philosophy but as a manual for survival. His lesson endures. It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. Love is fickle. Fear is reliable. Love asks for favors, fear obeys commands. Love whispers behind your back, fear guards its own. That is the first brick in the fortress. Walls are not built to keep enemies out but to remind even friends they are no longer equals. Those who rise to power grasp this instinctively. CEOs after layoffs, presidents after scandals, generals after betrayal, they don't explain, they don't plead, they don't weep. They stand silent, immovable. Not heartless, but disciplined enough to know that weakness is an invitation, a signal to the wolves. Power is not charisma or applause. It is restraint. It is silence. It is distance. And it is the constant reminder that the moment others think they understand you, they begin plotting your replacement. Here's the part most people never grasp: isolation at the top isn't forced, it's cultivated. It isn't a prison, it's a design. Those who hold power are not victims of their throne, they built the walls themselves. They severed ties before those ties could tighten around their neck. They stopped whispering secrets to spouses the moment one detail slipped. They stopped leaning on old friends the first time loyalty cracked. They stopped revealing their ambitions when they saw how easily dreams get twisted into weapons. Is that sad? Perhaps. But the real question is harsher: is it better to be loved in the grave, or feared and still alive? Machiavelli gave the answer 5 centuries ago, and it hasn't changed. Look at Steve Jobs. Visionary, genius, idol to millions, yet trust was a currency he rarely spent. Read his biography, study his interviews, ask those who worked under him, friends dismissed, allies humiliated, confidants discarded without hesitation. His inner circle rotated like gears in a machine. Why? Because he understood that innovation dies without control, and control demands distance. Distance, in turn, demands sacrifice. Jobs didn't crave solitude, but he embraced it. Every time he welcomed someone too close, they slowed him, questioned him, resisted him, until finally they replaced him. 1985, the boardroom coup, his own company, his own creation, torn away from him. So he disappeared. Built elsewhere. Returned stronger. And when he took back the throne, he purged those who had ousted him. From then on, he allowed no one to get close, not family, not colleagues, not even doctors who only discovered his illness when it was already too late. That wasn't tragedy. That was calculation. That was fortress building. And yes, there is a cost. Nights of paranoia, endless calculation, the weight of silence pressing down. But here's the brutal truth: power doesn't care about your sleeplessness, your loneliness, your happiness. It only cares if you are effective, unpredictable, and untouchable. Happiness is for those who clock out at 5, embrace their children, and forget the world until morning. Power doesn't give that luxury. Power is war without cease, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In war, there is no softness, no openness, no room for being understood. There's only the cold trinity: fear, respect, obedience. Alone. And yet, here lies the paradox: the more solitude surrounds a ruler, the sharper their vision becomes. Isolation breeds clarity. Distance strips away illusions. Silence grants control. Without the noise of approval or the weight of friendship, decisions cut deeper, strategies turn colder, and survival replaces popularity as the only true legacy. This is why kings don't keep best friends. Why generals don't read out their war plans over dinner. Why billionaires don't share their private thoughts on social media. Because they know every word can be twisted into a weapon, and every silence can be sharpened into a shield. Here is the real secret: the powerful are not lonely because they failed to form bonds. They are alone because they succeeded in strategy. Their fortresses are not stone, they are silence, discipline, ruthless selection. They understand that every person admitted into the inner circle is a potential fracture in their armor. So they allow no one in completely. Ever. And that refusal is not weakness. It is the highest strength. The ability to choose distance over comfort, control over companionship, survival over sentiment. Cold? Yes. But so is betrayal. So is the grave. So is the moment a trusted hand slides a knife between your ribs in exchange for a better bargain. Doubt it? Look at history. How many rulers endure? How many CEOs keep their throne? How many politicians walk away unbroken, on their own terms? Almost none. The few who remain are those who learn the lesson early: trust is rationed, vigilance is constant, and walls are essential. Not walls to lock the world out, but walls to hold power in. Machiavelli didn't merely describe this reality, he commanded it. He never said, "Be cruel." He said, "Be clever." He never urged rulers to chase hatred, only to command fear, for fear outlasts love. He never glorified loneliness, only demanded invulnerability. And invulnerability can only exist when a ruler becomes unreadable, unreachable, untouchable, utterly alone by design. Power is not built on networks, alliances, or endless handshakes. That's an illusion. Real power begins with subtraction, cutting variables, removing risks, eliminating threats. Not only the obvious enemies, but also the smiling faces, the loyal words, the friendly embraces. Especially those. The fortress at the top isn't made of stone. It is constructed from silence, from distance, from the ability to stand unmoved while the crowd claps and praises. And anyone unwilling to do this should stay where they are. Because at the summit it is colder than expected, emptier, quieter. And those who survive at the summit, they prefer it that way. What no one admits: loneliness is not the price of power, it is the very ground it rests on. Rising doesn't mean losing people. It means shedding them, like ballast, like anchors, like liabilities disguised as loyalty. Every handshake given, every favor returned, every secret shared, each is another rope tying the climber down. And the higher the ascent, the more those ropes turn into nooses. Machiavelli saw this play out with brutal clarity. He watched rulers drown in affection, suffocate in applause, convinced that love and popularity equaled security. He saw them bleed out on marble floors, murdered by the very men who raised a toast to them the night before. And he wrote, not with grief but with precision, that men are fickle, false, cowardly, greedy. Not some men, all men. Especially those closest. Cruel? Perhaps. But reality is not wrapped in kindness. Reality is consequence. And at the top, the consequence of misplaced trust is death, or exile, or disgrace, or a prison cell, or the sudden knife of a boardroom coup. The age doesn't matter. The title doesn't matter. The game hasn't changed. Only the weapons. Once it was daggers. Now it is leaked emails, whispered rumors, shareholder revolts, hostile media. The same war, just new tools. And those who remain standing are the ones who never played fair, never played nice. They played alone. Take Elizabeth I, the Virgin Queen. She never married. She bore no children. She was surrounded by nobles, advisors, and foreign suitors all vying for her hand, her favor, her throne. And what did she do? She pitted them against one another, kept them waiting, promised but never delivered. She understood that a husband meant a co-ruler, that an heir meant a challenge, that a family meant a weakness. She chose solitude, not from bitterness, but from calculation. She transformed that solitude into leverage. Her unmarried state became political strength, while kings around her were undone by wives, sons, brothers. Elizabeth reigned 45 years. She died alone, but on her own terms. In her bed. In control. Feared. Untouchable. That is not tragedy. That is mastery. That is the fortress strategy in motion. And this strategy isn't limited to monarchs. CEOs use it. Founders use it. Generals, coaches, presidents. Anyone who has held power and kept it knows one rule: proximity is danger. The instant someone feels entitled to your time, your thoughts, your ear, they soon believe they're entitled to your position. Entitlement is the seed of betrayal. A CFO may stay loyal until a better offer arrives. A VP may keep secrets until their ego is bruised. A lifelong friend may stand firm until the price for betrayal is too high to resist. Machiavelli never claimed men are evil. He said they are self-interested. And self-interest doesn't care about affection. It cares about survival, advantage, gain. If betrayal secures advancement, it will be done, smiling, shaking hands, perhaps even with tears. Want proof? Look at Sam Bankman-Fried. Young, charismatic, surrounded by friends. He ran a billion-dollar empire with open offices, open books, open trust. And where is he now? In a federal prison. His closest allies testifying against him. His circle collapsing in days. His reputation in ashes. Why? Because he believed in transparency and collaboration. Admirable? Maybe. Fatal? Absolutely. Machiavelli would have told him, lock the doors, restrict access, assume every man lies, especially those who call you brother. But by the time he learned it, the game was over. Now consider Warren Buffett. Well into his 90s. One of the richest men alive. Still in control. Still respected. Still feared. Step into his office, it's a shoebox. No entourage. No handlers hovering. No PR team feeding lines. He answers his own phone. He reads his own mail. He makes his own calls. He plays golf with friends but never discusses business. He gives interviews but never reveals his moves. He smiles for cameras, but his eyes remain calculating, unreadable. He didn't build his empire by being liked. He built it by being opaque, by being the quietest man in the room while still holding every advantage. That is the fortress. Not constructed from wealth, but from silence, discipline, and the refusal to let anyone peer inside. Because the fortress is not physical. It is psychological. It is the ability to sit among hundreds and feel nothing. To hear betrayal without flinching. To receive threats without moving. The real power is not in speeches or charisma or applause, it is in silence, in stillness, in the unreadable face that makes everyone else hesitate. Uncertainty is the sharpest weapon. And solitude is the forge where uncertainty is born. The powerful are not without emotions. They simply refuse to expose them. Not because they are machines, but because emotions are weak points. Tears, anger, joy, longing, all cracks in the armor. And at the summit, cracks are filled with blades. So the powerful learn to bury emotion deep, behind smiles, behind handshakes, behind silence. Does it seem inhuman? Perhaps. But so is the battlefield they operate on. Anyone seeking warmth and kindness should look elsewhere. Write poetry. Hug a dog. Volunteer. Because power does not reward humanity. It rewards control. And control demands distance. Here's a truth almost no one is willing to face: those who hunger for connection never make it to the true heights of power. Or if they do, they don't stay there long. Because connection demands compromise. And compromise is where decline begins. It starts with listening too closely to advisors. With bending to please shareholders. With shaping actions around public opinion. With valuing peace over victory. At that point, leadership dissolves into negotiation. Rule turns into management. And managers are always replaceable. Leaders remain leaders only if they're willing to stand apart. Only if they're ready to make the decision no one else dares. Only if they accept being hated, feared, distrusted. Alone. Consider Winston Churchill. Celebrated now, despised then. The man who led Britain through war, only to be cast out by voters once peace arrived. Why? Because he was unyielding, unreadable, ruthless. The people didn't like him. They didn't trust him. But in the darkest hour, they needed him. And once that need was gone, so was he. Churchill expected it. He didn't plead, didn't campaign, didn't break. He walked away, solitary, unshaken. Because he knew the truth: power is never owned, only rented. And the rent is paid in sacrifice, in solitude, in the willingness to bear rejection for as long as necessity lasts. This is the hidden layer most never see. The powerful don't simply end up isolated. They choose it. They embrace misunderstanding. They cultivate ambiguity. They speak in fragments. They withhold answers. They disappear without explanation. Because clarity is a weakness. Once people believe they understand you, they believe they can predict you. Once they predict you, they can undermine you. That is why distance is maintained, why silence is guarded, why the mask never drops. Let them whisper. Let them speculate. Let them fear the unknown. That is the true throne, not a gilded chair, not a title, but the aura of silence that surrounds it. Machiavelli himself warned, be feared, but not hated. And the way to avoid hatred is not through warmth or familiarity, but through inaccessibility. To remain untouchable. Unreachable. Unreadable. Not cruel. Not monstrous. Simply distant. Alone. Hatred comes from closeness, familiarity soured, promises broken, expectations unmet. Awe, however, comes from mystery. From distance. From the unknown. And awe is what protects. Awe is what sustains power. So the next time a leader stands alone behind a podium, silent after scandal, unmoved after crisis, don't pity them. Don't assume coldness. Don't imagine the absence of friends. Understand this, they did not lose their friends. They never truly had them. Not in the way most people believe. They maintain allies. They wield tools. They command assets. But friends? Friends are liabilities. And at the summit, liabilities are not kept. They are cut away. The fortress is not constructed to bar the world outside. It is designed to keep the essence of power contained within. Its mortar is not stone, but silence. Distance. The deliberate choice to remain alone, even when the crowd demands you descend, even when your heart longs for connection, even when exhaustion gnaws, even when fear whispers, even when humanity itself cries out. Because power does not care for humanity. It only cares for control. And control is never collective, it is solitary. The real decision is brutal, be loved and disposable, or feared and untouchable. Both cannot exist at the summit. To endure, you must choose. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. History repeats it without mercy. Every survivor at the peak confirms it, standing above the rest, stripped of comfort, but still holding power. Alone. Silent. Unreadable. Untouchable. This isn't doom. It's design. The price of sovereignty. The discipline to build walls not out of stone but out of distance, silence, and restraint. The recognition that affection fades, but awe endures. That popularity crumbles, but fear holds. And if you can accept that weight, if you're ready to live behind the fortress instead of outside it, then you've stepped into the real game. The one spoken in whispers. The one played in silence. The one where survival belongs not to the friendly, but to the unreadable. For a deeper dive into these strategies, into the architecture of power itself, continue with the playlist Machiavelli on Power as Design, where every lesson sharpens the walls of your own fortress.